Hi everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. My name is James. Before I get into everything, I need to ask one thing from you. Don't judge me until you've listened to this story all the way to the end. I know how easy it is to hear one part and start forming opinions, but trust me, this isn't the kind of story you rush through or half listen to. If you've ever been in a relationship where your heart was ahead of your head, you might understand. And if you haven't, maybe this will save you from learning the hard way like I did. If there's one regret I live with, it's that I didn't walk away early before things got out of hand. That's on me. Nobody forced me to stay. I don't blame anyone else for how things turned out. The truth is, the foundation of my relationship was shaky right from the beginning, and I take full responsibility for not putting things in place. But let me be honest with you, it wasn't all bad. There was peace before the drama, the betrayal, and the heartbreak. Some moments felt real and good. And I'm going to take you back to those moments because they matter too. They're part of the story, and they're what made me stay longer than I should have. So stick with me. This isn't just about pain. It's also about how easily peace can turn into a storm when you build your life on the wrong kind of love. I met Mary at a housewarming party. One of my closest friends had just moved into a new place and invited a bunch of us over to celebrate. It was one of those weekend gatherings with music and drinks. Not really my scene if I'm being honest, but I showed up because it was my friend, and I figure it wouldn't hurt to socialize a bit. Now, I've always been on the quieter side. So while everyone else seemed to be having the time of their lives, I stood back, taking everything in, trying to figure out when it'd be okay to leave without looking rude. That's when I noticed her, Mary. She was sitting on the armrest of a couch, quietly observing the room like I was. A few other girls had come with her, and they were all over the place, but she was different. She seemed present but distant. That caught my attention. I walked over to say, "Hey." She looked at me, a bit surprised, and smiled. That broke the ice. I asked her if she was okay, and she told me she wasn't really into parties. She said she only came along because she didn't want to be home alone. That got a laugh out of both of us. We started talking from there, and the conversation just flowed. Honestly, by the time the party was wrapping up, it felt like I'd known her for years. Before she left, we exchanged numbers. That simple exchange, her saving my number in her phone, me doing the same, was the beginning of something. At the time, I didn't know what that something would turn into. But that night, it felt good. And that's how it all started. We talked, we checked in on each other, and over time, something started to grow between us. It actually took a whole year before we officially started dating. But when we did, it felt right. There was this rhythm between us, like we both understood each other's silence, which, for two introverts, was gold. 3 years went by just like that. During that time, we grew even closer. I was already in my early 30s by then, past the phase of playing around. Mary was turning 28, and from our conversations, I knew she wanted something serious too. So I made the decision. I proposed to her, and she said yes without hesitation. We didn't want to drag out the engagement, so 6 months later, we got married. It felt like everything was finally falling into place. At least, that's what I thought. I was hopeful. I was sure I had made the right choice. When we first got married, I thought things were going to be smooth sailing. We had our first son, and everything felt like it was falling into place. But soon after, I started noticing changes in Mary. She started showing more interest in clothes, accessories, and gadgets. She'd casually mention items she liked, sending me links to shoes, bags, or jewelry, all tagged with that little "I want this" hint. I didn't think much of it at first, to be honest. I thought it was just part of the whole new mom thing. She wanted to feel good again after having the baby. But the more I looked at it, the more I realized something was off. It wasn't just about wanting nice things, it was about needing them. Every week, there was something else she wanted. "Babe, I need this dress for our anniversary. These shoes are on sale. They're perfect for the summer. I saw this necklace that would look great with my new dress." And here's where I got stupid. I kept buying it all. I kept telling myself, happy wife, happy home. I thought if I made her happy, everything would sort itself out. I didn't realize it at the time, but all that spending was slowly breaking us. I couldn't save anything, let alone make a down payment on the house we'd been talking about buying. Every time we started making headway, she'd bring up something else she wanted. And I'll be real with you, she wasn't asking for small stuff. No, Mary had a very specific vision in her head. She didn't want just any house. She wanted a big house in a nice neighborhood, somewhere close to good schools and shopping. That kind of house would need a massive down payment, one that we just couldn't afford. I thought it was all part of her having good taste, a desire to live well. She was working hard at home, dealing with a new baby, so I figured, why not spoil her a little? She deserves it, right? It seemed like the right thing to do. But deep down, I started to feel the strain. Things were getting tighter, but I kept pushing through, thinking everything would work out. The housing situation started dragging on because of all these other demands. Every time I tried to save, there was something else she needed. And I didn't have the guts to say no. I wasn't thinking clearly. I was blinded by the idea of keeping her happy. But now looking back, I can see just how wrong I was. The more I tried to keep her happy, the more I realized I wasn't taking care of what really mattered. Because I wasn't paying attention to the bigger picture. I was so caught up in the idea that buying her things would fix everything. I didn't even notice I was losing the ability to build a future, a foundation we could actually stand on. Now, when I think about it, I can't help but cringe. I thought I was being a good husband, making her feel special, but in reality, I was being a fool. All those little purchases, they didn't fix anything. They didn't make us happy. Instead, they made us both worse off. I had to face the hard truth later. I wasn't just failing financially. I was failing as a husband. I didn't see it then, but I see it now. 3 years into our marriage, I got laid off. Life doesn't always follow the script we write for it, does it? One day, I get called into the office, and just like that, I lost my job. I remember feeling like the floor had been ripped out from under me. At first, I thought it wouldn't be that bad. I figured I'd find something else. After all, I had a good track record, right? But the truth is, I was already living on leverage, and that was a huge mistake. We didn't have any substantial savings, just enough to get by from day to day. I was so focused on the now, on keeping Mary happy, on trying to fulfill her never-ending list of wants, that I didn't plan for the worst. And when the worst hit, we were caught with nothing but bills and promises we couldn't keep. I thought I'd get another job quickly. I mean, how hard could it be? But life had other plans. The job market was tight, and after a few months of scrambling to get interviews and network, I started to feel the weight of reality. My savings dwindled fast, and Mary's patience, well, it wasn't holding up either. She'd nag me constantly. Every time I walked in the door, there was something to complain about. I could barely get a word in without hearing how she expected me to do something. In her eyes, I wasn't doing enough because we didn't have money. I wasn't working hard enough, fast enough, or smart enough. It was like I had become this walking failure in her eyes, and I couldn't shake that feeling. But here's the thing, I wasn't lazy. Not at all. I was trying everything I could. I picked up side gigs, tried to freelance, and took on any job I could find. Some of it was stuff I hated, but I didn't care. I just wanted to make ends meet. But every time I made a little money, it disappeared just as fast because Mary's demands never stopped. It was like trying to fill a bottomless pit. One week, I'd barely scrape enough together to pay for groceries, and the next, she'd be asking for something new. And I'd foolishly try to make her happy, thinking I could fix things by giving her what she wanted. I thought if I just gave her enough of those things, maybe it would quiet her down for a bit. But it never did. We ate through the last of what we had, and that's when it hit me. I was in a deep hole, a hole I dug myself. So, I'm going to give you one piece of advice that I wish I had heard back then. Don't be like me. Don't think that just because you're in love, you can fix everything by throwing money at it. Don't ignore the warning signs that you're digging yourself into a financial grave, thinking it'll all work out. I had a chance to step back, take a breath, and make a better plan, but I didn't. Instead, I kept pushing myself into a corner, trying to keep up with a life I couldn't afford. And now, well, I was paying the price. One day, I came home from work, tired as usual. As I walked through the hallway to the bedroom, I heard Mary talking on the phone. She didn't know I was home yet. As I listened, I figured she was talking to someone, and I couldn't catch the whole conversation, but I caught enough. I can't see you every day. Twice a week is enough for now. I knew exactly what that meant. My mind raced. I walked into the room, and she froze. For a split second, I saw that familiar look of guilt. I asked her straight up, "Who was that on the phone?" She stuttered, trying to cover up, trying to come up with some excuse. But I wasn't having it. I wasn't going to play that game anymore. I stayed firm. I wasn't leaving until I got the truth. And then, finally, she admitted it. Her voice was shaky, but she said it. She said, "I'm doing you a favor by staying here." She went on, "My new man spends on me." All this time, I had been bending over backward, trying to keep our life together, trying to make her happy. And here she was, telling me she was with someone else, using him for what he could give her. At that moment, I didn't care about anything anymore. I just wanted her out. I told her flat out, "Go be with him. You clearly don't want me. You've got what you need." She didn't hesitate. "I will," she said, and she didn't even sound sorry. She said it like she was just waiting for me to give her permission. "You have nothing to offer," she added, and the way she said it broke me all over again. The little things I'd overlooked or just didn't want to see showed she had been getting money from him all this time. Then, just to rub salt in the wound, she called him right in front of me and told him, "I'm moving in with you." She didn't even care that I was standing there. "I'll be ready when you get here," she said. It wasn't long before she started packing up her things, my son's things too. It was like she couldn't wait to leave. But then, she turned around and gave me a look. "If you try to take him, I'll make your life miserable," she threatened. But she was right. I had no power. I was just a man with nothing left but empty promises and broken dreams. I won't lie. There was a part of me that wanted to beg her, to plead for her to stay, to make everything okay again. But something inside me knew that I couldn't let her manipulate me anymore. I watched her leave. I let her go. And yeah, it hurt like hell. But something in me said it was the right thing to do. Months after Mary left, things got really rough for me. The pain was hard to describe. The feeling of being left with nothing, and the sting of knowing she had moved on so easily while I was left to pick up the broken pieces of my life, broke me. She didn't even hesitate to divorce me. And in doing so, she made sure that the man she had cheated on me with would have a chance to marry her. The kicker? I had nothing left. I couldn't even afford to fight her for anything in the divorce. There was no house, no shared savings, nothing. She walked away with my son. I was left with only a few belongings and a broken heart. I had to face the brutal reality of my situation. At first, the emptiness felt suffocating. I couldn't help but wonder how I'd gotten here, but then something shifted. As much as I hated what had happened, I realized I didn't have to spend the little money I was earning anymore. I didn't have to worry about keeping up with her endless demands. I was no longer pressured to buy things I couldn't afford. That's when I began hustling and saving. Every day, I was trying something new, freelancing, taking on physically demanding jobs, anything that could put some money in my pocket. It felt like a grind, but I kept pushing. Along the way, I discovered that there were a lot of opportunities out there, but most of them required money to get started. Money I didn't have. It felt like the world was just out of my reach, but I kept at it. I had heard about people making money online, so I started looking into it. I found forums like Reddit and Black Hat World, where people were talking about all these different ways to make money, from dropshipping to affiliate marketing, and even things like SEO. I didn't know much about any of it, but I was willing to try anything. Some of the methods I tried didn't work at all. Some barely broke even, meaning I didn't lose money, but didn't make much either. But I didn't give up. Every small failure was a lesson, and every lesson pushed me closer to figuring out what would work. The first few months after the divorce were a blur of uncertainty and hustle. There were nights when I'd sit up late, looking at my bank account and wondering if I was making any real progress. But I kept going. Even when it felt like I was getting nowhere, I knew I had to keep pushing. I didn't have a choice. I couldn't go back to the way things were before. I wasn't going to let her mistake be the end of me. It had been 3 years since the divorce, and I won't lie, those years were brutal. But they were also the most pivotal years of my life. I spent those years just grinding, keeping my head above water. The weight of my past mistakes, especially the ones with Mary, was heavy. But it also gave me something important: clarity. I could finally see the bigger picture. And in those 3 years, everything changed. I had a drop-shipping store. At first, it was just another side hustle, one of those try it out and see if it sticks things. But for the first time in a long while, luck finally smiled on me. I stumbled on a product that clicked. It sold, and not just a few here and there, a lot. I remember checking the numbers one night, and the sales were coming in fast. It was faster than I ever expected. For a moment, I couldn't even believe it. I'd been so used to working just to get by, barely able to scrape together enough to cover bills, let alone think about building anything real. But here it was, proof that it was possible to make it. As the money came in, it didn't take long for me to see an opportunity. E-commerce wasn't just a one-time thing. There was more to it. So I expanded. I started branching out into other online businesses. I tried different products and different services, and it worked. Slowly at first. The momentum grew, and money started coming in fast. I remember sitting back one day and just staring at my bank account balance. I hadn't seen numbers like that since, well, probably never. What really felt different this time, though, was the fact that I wasn't giving it all away. No wife was draining every penny I earned. I started to save aggressively. Every cent that wasn't reinvested in my businesses or stocks went into a savings account. I wasn't just building my business anymore, I was building my future. I'd learned the hard way. I knew that the work I was putting in now would set me up for the long term. That freedom I'd been looking for was in my grasp. Once things started to stabilize, I knew I could spend on myself without feeling guilty about it. I bought a house in the neighborhood Mary had always dreamed of. I could finally live in a place that represented my hard work. I also bought a comfortable car. And then I started upgrading my wardrobe, too. After I had some level of stability, I decided to go look for my son. For so long, I didn't feel like I could offer anything. Back when I had nothing to give, I figured maybe he was better off with Mary, my ex-wife. When I found him, he wasn't in a good place. I had missed so much, and it was all staring back at me in his eyes. I eventually found out about Mary's life since she left. What I discovered didn't surprise me. The man she ran off with didn't exactly turn out to be the prince she was hoping for. She thought he was going to marry her. She really believed that. Turns out he was already married with kids in another state. He was just a contractor, working on some big project in our city, and once that project was finished, he disappeared without a trace. And that was it. Mary was left holding the bag. All that future she dreamed about, gone. I wasn't expecting to find her the way I did, though. When I saw her again, she still had her beauty. Sure, but she had aged, probably from the hardships that life had thrown her way. I told her I wanted my son back. He didn't belong there with her, not in the state she was in. She hadn't been stable for a long time. That's when she looked at me, with a mix of confusion and desperation. She asked, "What about me?" I didn't even flinch. I just asked her, "What about you, what?" She tried to reason with me, saying, "Won't you take back your full family now that things are good?" It was almost laughable. I didn't even feel pity. I simply told her, "You're not my family." I couldn't be dragged into that web of guilt and manipulation anymore. Mary broke down right there. She cried, saying how confused she had been, how the man had tricked her, how he had lied to her. She was trying to make herself the victim again, just like she had when she left me. But I wasn't buying it. I wasn't about to let her use me for the second time. I pulled my hand away from hers and said, "When I had nothing, you had options. Now that I have everything, I have options, too. And I choose peace, not pain." That's when it turned ugly. She started screaming, accusing me of trying to take my son away from her. She told me I had abandoned them all these years and that I was selfish for wanting to take him now. It was the same old story, but this time I wasn't going to get caught up in it. I didn't argue. I didn't try to explain myself. I simply said, Fine, we'll let the courts decide. So, she took me to court. She filed a lawsuit, claiming that I had abandoned them both, that I'd been a terrible father who had left her to raise our son on her own. It was the most absurd thing I'd ever heard. I didn't take it lightly. I knew this battle was going to be tough, especially with how the system often favors women in custody cases. But I had no choice. I wasn't going to let her keep my son for me. He deserved better, and so did I. I hired the best lawyer I could afford. He laid out the facts with precision, showing the court exactly how the marriage ended. First, there was her cheating. She had been openly carrying on an affair while I was doing everything I could to keep the family afloat. Then came her abandonment. She walked out on me, and she walked out on our son without a second thought. And finally, her unstable condition. She was living in a mess. It was clear that she couldn't provide a stable environment for our son. The judge listened. He took into account everything I had gone through, everything I had fought for. He saw how unstable Mary was, and how I had managed to pull myself out of the mess she'd left behind. The ruling came down in my favor. I got custody of our son. Mary didn't take it well, of course. She tried to contest the ruling. She threw every accusation at me, hoping to change the judge's mind. But the truth was out, and there was no changing that. Her legal bills piled up. She thought that if she won custody, she could use the money from the compensation to pay off her debts. But her plan backfired. Then, out of desperation, she sued me for alimony. She thought she could squeeze some more money out of me, but that case was thrown out too. You see, in our state, alimony is only granted if the marriage has lasted a certain number of years. Our marriage didn't meet that requirement. So, her hopes of getting any kind of financial relief from me were dashed. The whole thing was exhausting, emotionally, financially, and mentally. But when the dust finally settled, I had what I wanted most, my son. And that's something no one could take away from me. After the court's ruling, Mary's desperation became more obvious with each passing day. She thought she could somehow worm her way back into my life. It started with her calling me. At first, I just ignored the calls. I wasn't that stupid anymore. Then she started texting all those heartfelt, "I miss you," and "Can we talk" messages. I didn't even read them. I knew exactly what she was trying to do, and I didn't care. But Mary wasn't one to back down so easily. She tried to pull me back in during our child's visitation times. I could see that clearly she was trying to manipulate me. She'd play the poor me card, trying to make me feel bad for how things had turned out. She'd guilt-trip me about how hard things were for her after everything fell apart. But I wasn't buying it anymore. It was almost like she thought that showing up with a sad face would erase the years of betrayal, the lies, and the hurt she caused. She had no idea what it was like to finally be free of that weight. Then, things took an even more obvious turn. She started wearing seductive outfits. She'd put on the kind of clothes she knew I used to like. She thought if she looked good enough, I'd forget everything that had happened. But it wasn't going to work. I'd already learned the hardest lesson of my life. Don't ever let your heart guide your decisions in a relationship where someone has already shown you who they truly are. I looked her straight in the eye one day during one of these visits and said, "I've learned my lesson." She couldn't get to me anymore. No matter how much she tried, I wasn't going back to the life I had before. That was the turning point for me. Looking back now, I'll say it straight. Those years she was gone were the worst and the best of my life. They were the worst because of all the pain. I was humiliated, betrayed, and left with nothing. But they were also the best because those years gave me the time and space to truly wake up. I had to figure out who I was again without her constantly demanding things from me, without being tied down to the life I thought I was supposed to have. Those years of suffering were the crucible where I forged the man I am today, the man who built a life for himself, made money, found peace, and became independent in ways I never thought possible. So, as much as I hated the pain, it forced me to grow in ways I needed. Now Mary and I still co-parent. That's about it. We're not friends, we're not back together, and I don't want to be part of her life anymore. She's a part of my past, and that's where she stays. I focus on my son, and I focus on my life. And that's the way it has to stay. So I'm going to ask you, the viewer, what would you have done differently? If you were in my shoes, would you have folded and let her back in? Would you have begged for her love, like I almost did? Or would you have walked away? I know some of you might think I'm a simp, but honestly, that's fine. I've woken up from my slumber. I'm not the same guy anymore. And I wouldn't change a thing. Thanks for watching this. I appreciate every single one of you who stuck with me through this story. If you know someone who needs to hear this, share it with them. It might just save a soul.